everybody, Ed Dana YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about iconic guitars of the past. How's it going, everybody? I got the sun blaring through the window and it's going to be another little while before that goes down. So deal with the light on my head. As we all know, there are guitars from rock and roll history that have become legendary. All kinds of guitars, Les Pauls, SGs, and especially Fender Stratocasters. Well, just because of the nature of the beast and who we're talking about, this is going to be the main focus, but a few other guitars will be mentioned. Let's get right to it. I've always been interested in where guitars came from and where the guitars that the great players came from, where they got them, how they acquired them, were they born with them, were they given to them, did they magically appear at their doorstep? You'd be surprised at some of the stories. Now the first one I'm going to go to is a bass, and one of the most legendary basses in rock and roll history, and that is Geddy Lee's Black Fender jazz bass. Now, as everybody knows, Geddy was famous for playing a Rickenbacker 2001, both in the studio and on stage. But one day, I believe in Toronto, he was with a couple of his buddies walking around, and they wandered into a pawn shop, and he saw a black Fender jazz bass for $200 Canadian. He picked it up and played it, said, you know what, for $200 I'll buy this thing, and he bought it. And he took it home, and it stayed at home. He didn't play it in the studio, he didn't play it on stage. Then the Tom Sawyer album came around, time to record. He decided to take that bass to the studio. Well, what he found out was that he got more response out of that jazz bass in the top end and the low end being more punchier, in his words, than the Rickenbacker or any other bass he had played. Now that bass has since gone on to become a signature model, first made in Japan, now made in the USA. And it's had some mods on it. You know, it had the Leo Kwan badass bass bridge on it originally. Well, he can no longer get those because of production problems, so Fender has come up with their own version of it. But that bass, that black bass, he bought for $200 Canadian. That's amazing. The next guitar I want to talk about is Andy Summers from the Police, the Telecaster that he plays with the humbucker in the neck and the single coil in the bridge. Now, as the story goes, or what is believed, this is the only guitar, the primary guitar, that Andy Summers played all throughout the career of the Police, recording and on stage. Here again is another American Telecaster bought in the UK in a pawn shop for £200. 200 quid was what he paid for this guitar. Now, as you can see from the picture and pictures of Andy playing with it, it's been through the war. It's, you know, taken its beatings. But a lot of these guitars that I'm going to talk about have, and that's what makes them unique. But, you know, there again, a $200 guitar launched a guy's career that spanned decades. The next guitar I'm going to talk about is arguably the most famous Stratocaster in music history, especially rock and roll and blues. And that's Stevie Ray Vaughan's 1959 #1 brownish sunburst Stratocaster with the upside down bridge with the whammy bar, really for a left-handed guitar. I don't know what the point there was, but that's the way he liked it. That guitar was actually given to him by Ray Henning from Heart of Texas Music in Dallas, Texas, was gifted to Stevie Ray, and Stevie always maintained and claimed that that was a 59 Stratocaster, and then it had been rebuilt more times than a 55 Chevy. Well, his guitar techs had kind of noted that the body was stamped 62 and the neck may have been stamped 63, but Stevie Ray insisted it was a 59 because those were the markings on the pickups. Now, that is one of the most iconic Stratocasters in history. And here again, no big money. The guitar was gifted to him. It was just a Stratocaster. Nothing special. only special because of who played it. Okay, for my money, the guitar that was the predecessor to Stevie Ray's was no doubt the 1961 three-tone Sunburst Stratocaster played by Rory Gallagher. Okay, this guitar obviously took more abuse than any Stratocaster I've ever seen. It apparently, at one point, spent the night in a stream somewhere after either it fell off a truck or a car accident or was stolen, something. But here again is a guitar that Rory Gallagher bought early in his career for 100 pounds. 100 British pounds he paid for this guitar. And look what it has become. It has become legendary. Joe Bonamassa played it, and he said he could feel the ghost of Rory Gallagher in that guitar. You know, these guitars, they're amazing. They're pieces of rock history. And look at the prices these guys are paying for them. Now, I'm going to tell you about a few other guys that paid a little bit more for their guitars, but they're no less incredible. 100 pounds for Rory Gallagher Stratocaster. You know what that sucker's worth now? That's worth more than 100 pounds, boy. Okay, this next one I'm going to talk about has a lot of history to it and fetched more money at Sotheby's auction than any other guitar before its time, and that's Eric Clapton's Blackie. As the story goes, Eric Clapton went into a pawn shop, I think in LA, and bought 4 or 5 Fender Stratocasters, and some of them were like 59s and 60s. And he took these guitars apart and reassembled them with the parts that he wanted on each guitar. And he gave one to George Harrison, and he gave one to another guy, and he gave one to another guy. And he kept the one that he thought had the best bits. And recorded, you know, a lot of his most famous music on this. Now, that guitar eventually got retired because the neck just got worn out and was shot. And it finally went to auction at Sotheby's. But he bought all 5 of these guitars for between $200 and $300 a piece at the time. So, here again, you know, you're talking more than $100, you're talking $200 or $300. But he bought 4 or 5 of them, and then disassembled and put the best bits together and kept the one that he liked the best, which happened to be Blackie. Okay, now we're going to get off of the Stratocaster for a minute. We're going to get back to them, but we're going to get off of them for a minute. And we're going to talk about probably the most iconic Les Paul in rock and roll history, and that is Jimmy Page's 1959 Les Paul Custom. He bought that Les Paul from Joe Walsh in the early 70s for $1,200. Now, Gibsons were always more expensive than Fenders, especially back then. And to me, $1,200 for a Les Paul at that time, even a high-end one, was kind of pushing the envelope. But you know, well, it did belong to Joe Walsh, so that could have had some value there. But there were some special features on this guitar. It had a super slim neck, and it had, I believe, either a boost switch on the bridge pickup that either fattened it up or created gain, but it was something that had been added and was not a Gibson thing. But that was primarily the guitar that carried Led Zeppelin through most of their performing and recording career, was that Les Paul. Not bought new. Bought from Joe Walsh. He didn't buy it from a shop. He didn't buy it from Gibson. He got it from Joe Walsh. Now, prior to that, him, Jeff Beck, and a few others were playing Telecasters. And Jeff Beck talks about being in the studio and having Seymour Duncan walk in and show him this Telecaster with these 2 humbucker pickups in it. And Jeff just thought it was great. And he said, "Will you trade it for the Esquire?" And Jeff was like, "Yeah, that guitar's beat." And he said the moment that guitar walked out the door with Seymour Duncan, he knew that he had just given up a part of the Yardbirds history, all the recording that he had done on that guitar and all the history that went with it. but not the fear. That guitar went to a safe place. It got locked away by Seymour Duncan and has been since taken well care of. And as the story goes, or Jeff says, he can go visit it whenever he wants. So you got that. Now, what I want to add here about that Esquire of Jeff Beck's, he didn't buy that guitar. That was a guitar that was in the studio when the Yardbirds were recording, and he just kind of nicked it because he didn't have an adequate guitar to play on. And so this guitar was in the studio, and he grabbed it and started playing it and just kind of acquired it, and it became his. So he didn't even buy it. He nicked it. Okay, and last but not least, and not to leave the acoustic set out, the Martin N20 Trigger, played by Willie Nelson. Alright, this is a Martin N20 classical nylon stringed acoustic guitar. And these, as far as I can tell, are kind of rare. It's really hard to come by. And this would obviously be the most famous one. Now, Willie acquired this guitar after the guitar that he was playing got damaged to the point that the luthier he sent it to said it was beyond repair. And Willie said, I gotta have a guitar to play. And the guy offered him this Martin N20 sight unseen for $750. Now, Willie, of course, said, okay, I need a guitar. He goes, but the only stipulation I have is you have to take the electric pickup out of my old guitar and put it in this new guitar. Well, Willie always wanted to emulate like the playing of the Django Reinhardt and the gypsy type jazz players. And the nylon string appealed to him, so he stuck with that guitar. And over the years, his luthiers and techs have played hell holding this guitar together. There's stories of them actually watching pieces of this guitar fly off as he's playing it on stage and hitting it with a pick. And sometimes Willie uses a pick and sometimes he doesn't. But he obviously is hard on the guitar. You can see it from the picture. But that's a Martin N20, $750. Alright folks, that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you like what you see, subscribe. You know, guitars are what they are, and you don't always have to pay top dollar. Now, I've been accused of being a guitar snob, but my number one is a 1994 Fender Mexico that has been upgraded with samarium cobalt pickups, Spurzle tuners, a little bit of work on the bridge, S1 switch, super switch, all by Fender. It's all stock Fender stuff except for the Spurzles. But, you know, I got this guitar from a big box music store for $149. And about $350 later, so less than $500, that's the guitar I play, okay? Or the main guitar I play. So it's not always what you spend, but it's what you do with it. Alright folks, that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Out with the old, in with the new. Until next time, hang in there.